Hello everybody, my name is Kevin and today we're going to be doing some tracking tests. So that's what you see here is kind of my tracking test setup. The reason why I'm doing this tracking test is I've recently ran into an issue with my main scope that I use where it actually doesn't seem to track true. So I've sent it back for warranty and I'm looking for a replacement until it comes back for my rifle. So before I went ahead and just mounted either one of these two scopes, I wanted to check them to see what the correction factor may need to be. So this is basically my setup. As you can see, I've got a wood block that I've affixed a Picatinny rail to. It's very simple. It's kind of just fixed in there with those clamps. And I'm going to be testing two scopes today. So it's the Bushnell ERS 6x24, which is got that G2 reticle and it's a mil scope. And then I've got the Vortex Diamondback tactical in 4x16. First focal plane, and this one's in MOA, so I know this is a fairly popular scope, so I think people will maybe enjoy seeing that one. But that's what we're going to be doing today. So my test setup is really simple. I'm going to be mounting this scope in my vise and actually locking it down, and I've measured the distance is exactly 20 meters between the center of my scope and the target down at the end of my basement, which I'm going to show you guys in a moment. So I go to the end of my basement here, and this is essentially the 20 meter mark. Okay, so that's more or less exactly measured from the center of my scope to the end of this wall here. And what I've done is I've put two different targets. I've got one target which is going to be my mils target. So essentially I've calculated out that at 20 meters we've got at 10 centimeters is equal to 5 mils, and then I've just done a total of 15 mils. And then over here on the left, I've done a similar calculation where instead of being in mils, I'm in MOA. So each revolution is 15 MOA. Made sense. And 15 MOA at 20 meters is equal to 8.72 centimeters. So that's what these are. And essentially, what I'm going to be doing now is aiming at the top point here and adjusting my scope to see how well it tracks or how well they don't track. Okay, so the Vortex Diamondback tactical set on 16 power is now on the vise, and we're going to go ahead and run it through a total of 60 MOA in 15 MOA increments and then return to 0 at the very end. Here go the first 15 MOA. .30 MOA, 45 MOA, and 60 MOA. And return to 0. Alright, so that concludes the testing for the Vortex Diamondback Tactical. Okay, so I've got the Bushnell ERS 6x24 in the vise here, and we're going to run it through a total of 15 mils of elevation in 5 mil increments to see how well it tracks. So let's go ahead and get started. Here is the first 5 mils. And 10 mils. And 15 mils. And return to 0. On that last test with the Bushnell, I just wanted to kind of point out the error at the very bottom limit of that 15 mil of elevation. So as you can see here, I've dialed in 15 mils in my scope, and I'm over 15 mils in on the paper. So what I'm going to do is just dial it back however many clicks it takes and let you guys know. So it looks like we're about 6 to 7 clicks off from what is published. So we're now at call it 14.4 mils, and this is 15 mils. So there is some tracking correction required here. Okay, so as you saw in that last part of the video there, where there's actually an error in the tracking on the Bushnell scope, there's actually a nice feature in my ballistic software that can correct that. So if you recall, basically the actual elevation that was on the wall was 15 mils, and then the actual dialed elevation was 14.4 mils or 144 clicks. Okay, so in Straylock we'll see how to actually correct that, which is a nice feature, so that you can still use this scope even though the tracking is off. In Straylock, you'll go into this MOA MRAD, and then you go to click value validation, and in here this is where you need all the information. So I was doing this test at 20 meters exactly from the target to the center of my scope, and the clicks that I actually put in was 144 clicks, and then my vertical travel was 15 mils, which corresponds to 30 centimeters. So you put that in, and it tells you the corrective value. So that means that my scope actually, for each 0.1 mil click, it's actually giving me 0.14 mil click. And now I can use this value in my Straylock calculation. And whenever I go and do my calculations, I actually use, instead of 16.2 mils, I actually use 15.6 mils. And now I've corrected my elevation for the error in my scope.